Welcome to episode 22 of the B Movie Club. This is your host, Kevin. This week we're going to talk about the 1977 classic, Smokey and the Bandit, starring Burt Reynolds, Sally Field, Jerry Reed, and Jackie Gleason. For those of you guys joining us for the first time, typically what we do is we pick movies that aren't necessarily B movies in the strictest definition, but they're movies that maybe have been forgotten over the last 10, 20, 30 years. So feel free to send in your comments, your suggestions for future movies we could do. Send in your favorite scenes, send in your favorite quotes, and we'll talk about them on the show. So, again, this week we're doing Smokey and the Bandit. Basically what the plot is, and I watched it recently after having not seen it in ages. In fact, I wasn't sure I'd ever sat all the way through it. Basically, the Bandit is kind of this trucker. See, in the 70s, there were a lot of heroic truckers. We've talked about this before. It was big. Everybody was on the CB radios back in the day. You had, BJ and the Bear, and of course, the Bandit. The Bandit is Burt Reynolds. He's kind of a legend in the trucking community, evidently. And he is offered a deal where he will travel from Georgia to Texarkana and bring back a semi full of Coors beer, which I guess is illegal. Evidently, they didn't have Coors in Georgia for some reason, and they just love the Coors. It's the banquet beer, after all, right? It's illegal because I guess traveling and carrying beer without a license across state lines is considered bootlegging. So they say, Bandit, go from Georgia to Texarkana, get the Coors, pick it up, take it back to Georgia in 28 hours. And we'll give you $80,000. Initially watching this, I thought it was a bet. Like, we don't think you can do it. But upon further review, it wasn't a bet. It was just like a job. They were essentially paying him to do this. They really like their Coors. Please do this in a short amount of time. We'll give you money. So as part of the deal, the Bandit says, okay, well, you have to give me a brand new Trans Am. And have to pay for the beer and everything else. So it's like, really, the Bandit comes out ahead no matter what. Even if they fail, hey, at least they get a new car out of the deal. So he goes and finds his buddy Cletus Snow, played by Jerry Reed, the famous country western singer. And so the way it'll work, evidently, is, because I guess they have to travel like 120 miles an hour each way to make it. Cletus will drive the semi. And the Bandit will be what they call the blocker. He will drive recklessly and wildly, and I guess draw the attention of the Smokies, which are the cops. They're called Smokies because they wear the Smokey the Bear hats, evidently. He'll grab their attention, so they'll be chasing him around. Meanwhile, Cletus can drive 120 miles an hour straight on through and not be harassed. Because again, if they catch him, they'll arrest him. Along the way, the Bandit picks up Sally Field, who has just run away from her wedding day. She's going to marry some crazy hillbilly, who happens to be the son of Jackie Gleason, who's Sheriff Buford T. Justice. So that sets up, along with the regular cops chasing the Bandit, you also have Buford T. Justice chasing him. And I don't want to spoil the ending, but let's just say they don't get caught. Oh, spoiler. I guess I just gave it away. This is in the height of the 70s Burt Reynolds movie, where basically every one of his movies consisted of elongated car chases with the cops chasing him, and then, the wackiness of the cops going off bridges and crashing into each other and flipping over and all that fun. With Hooper and all the Cannonball Run movies and Stoker Ace. This was basically Burt Reynolds' wheelhouse for those years. Burt Reynolds, a lot of people don't remember, a lot of our younger viewers, was huge. from like 77 to like 84, he was like the biggest box office draw in the world, essentially. Everybody loved Burt Reynolds. You know, he was huge. He was like bigger than Schwarzenegger and Stallone and all those things. But then he pretty much fell off a cliff pretty quickly in the mid-'80s. Then it was adios muchacho. People just weren't as interested in the heroic trucker, evidently. I know, it's shocking. And you know, the car chases, while fun, you know, didn't seem to serve the plot all that much. It's like these extended, you know, the cops are after us, let's, you know, do some crazy driving, and there's fun music, and Jerry Reed's Eastbound and Down playing in the background. Good times. They actually made 2 sequels. Burt Reynolds was only in the first one. The third, Smokey and the Bandit 3, actually had Jackie Gleason playing the role of the Bandit. Whatever, okay? They actually made some TV movies about this later, obviously not starring Burt Reynolds, although at that time they probably could have gotten him cheap. Another thing that's funny about this is Jackie Gleason. When I was a kid, the only reason I knew who Jackie Gleason was is from the Smokey and the Bandit movies and from like The Toy with Richard Pryor. I had no idea he was on Honeymooners back in like the 50s or whatever. And some of our younger viewers won't even know who Jackie Gleason is at all. It's funny, I read somewhere that this was actually Alfred Hitchcock's, you know, guilty pleasure. So there you go, you have that going for you. Pontiac actually gave the movie 3 Pontiac Trans Ams for use, obviously, as the Bandit's special car, and 2 Pontiac Bonnevilles for use as like the cops' cars that are chasing. And shocking, I know, the cars were basically getting destroyed on a daily basis. And by the end, it's like they literally had to put a car back together using just crazy spare parts. They had to like cannibalize the 3 Trans Ams to kind of glue them back together. There's actually one scene where the Bandit goes over a bridge, spoiler alert, lands on the other side. And the thing that they don't tell people in these movies is that when you jump things like that in your car is always destroyed. You're not going to keep driving it. It's a sad story. So that totaled 1 car right there. So there you go. You can't just crash your car into things. You can't jump over things. Despite what happened in Speed, you can't leap your bus over, you know, a broken bridge or anything else and expect the bus to live. It's a sad story, I know. Anyway, the story's pretty much just kind of fun. It's kind of it's light. There's not a whole lot going on. In fact, the guy who wrote it and directed it, Hal Needham, was originally just a stuntman. Like, he was a famous stuntman who'd been in a bunch of things. And he wrote this script, and originally Jerry Reed was going to play the Bandit. And Hal Needham actually was going through divorce. He got kicked out of his house and was living in Burt Reynolds' like guest house. He'd been, you know, a stuntman in a bunch of Burt Reynolds movies up to that point. And he showed the script to Burt Reynolds, and Burt Reynolds was like, hey, you know, I'll do it. I'll be the Bandit. And at that point, they went from basically being a low-budget B movie to having him sign on. And now it's, you know, they're able to get Jackie Gleason, and it's a big hit, obviously. Jackie Gleason was given free reign to just basically ad-lib all his lines. So every line you see in that movie by Jackie Gleason is pretty much just him just winging it, kind of doing his own Jackie Gleason thing. So there you have that. This movie got 77% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. I know some of the critics weren't huge fans. I know Gene Siskel wasn't a huge fan. Leonard Maltin gave it decent numbers, but again, you know, it was actually the second highest grossing movie behind Star Wars the year it came out. So that's saying something. There you go. They didn't have to have aliens or spaceships, and they still did pretty well at the box office. So there you have it. That's Smokey and the Bandit. Next week, we're going back to the horror genre as we get a little closer to Halloween. We're going back to John Carpenter and Kurt Russell. This is actually the 3rd movie with Kurt Russell. Big fan. The Thing. The Thing. It was a remake from a movie from the 50s called The Thing from Outer Space. And they're actually doing a prequel later this year, also called The Thing. Very creative title, I know. So we'll talk about that next week. As you know, you can send me any comments, questions, favorite scenes, favorite quotes, movie suggestions. You can do that at my page on YouTube. You can do it on Twitter at KD9575, which is my initials and my birthday, if you want to send a gift. Or you can do it on Facebook. As you know, I end every episode with a totally out of context quote from the movie. And here we go. There is no way you came out of my loins. Well, first thing I do when I get home is I'm going to punch your mama in the mouth.